And so, Pastor Bill, if you'll come up here, we want to welcome him.
All right. Thank you, BJ. Appreciate it, buddy. Glad to be with you today. As you can see, the set behind us is decorated for Christmas because it's that time of the year. And so don't let that distract you if you're receiving it at some other time as well. My goal, though, today is to help you to learn about thinking. In fact, the title of this message is, What Are You Thinking? And I got a lot of this as reading John Maxwell's book many years ago, and he talked about thinking for a change, and I learned a lot about that. And I think a couple of things that we have to know is when it comes to thinking and what that is, and when I say, what are you thinking, is that most people think that their thinking is the only way. You know, that whatever they're doing, their thinking is the only way to think. And if you think that way, I want to change your thinking. The other is they think that their thinking is the right way. And the idea is that there's only one way, and that's my way. And therefore, anybody that thinks differently from me, I can profile them, or I can neglect what they say or reject what they're teaching. And so I want to dispel a lot of that. Albert Einstein made this quote. He said, "The world as we've created it is just a process of our thinking. And it cannot be changed without changing our thinking." And I think obviously he was a brilliant man, but what he said there was certainly brilliant, that everything that changes and everything we have came about because of thinking. Now, John Locke said it this way. He said, "Reading furnishes the mind with only the materials of knowledge. Because all you're gaining is just knowledge when you read. But it is thinking that makes us what we really are." And that's true. How many people have you known that they can recite everything they've ever read, but they've never really stopped and created for themselves an original idea? They're just a mere repeater of what they've heard, but they've never had a chance to break beyond what they've heard and explore internally and evaluate their circumstances and learn how to think of their own. Somebody said it one time this way, in fact, and I kind of modified it, but because we've lost the ability to think, whoever controls the media controls the mind. And whoever controls the mind controls behavior. And that is without a doubt in this day and this time certainly true. As you notice that basically people don't think at all. They just repeat whatever they've read or whatever they've heard or whatever the media has told them, and their behavior follows suit. So we've got to come back to learning what thinking is and what are we thinking. So let me tell you what thinking is not right off the bat. Okay, one is thinking is not musing. You know, musers ponder over their words and they appear to be thinkers. I know people that have learned the gift of that even in communication. They'll stand up, and if they're speaking, they pause, they look, they make certain that they're acting like that suddenly they're about to undesignate a bomb, and while they're doing that, people are thinking, wow, they must be brilliant. And they're doing it for effect. They're just musers. It may sound intellectual, but it accomplishes nothing. They're not thinkers, they're just musers. I want to know at the end of the day, what did they really say that was worth something and not the presentation. We also think that thinking is not guaranteed by education. Some education teaches us what to think, but we don't want to know what to think. I want to know how to think. I don't want to just know what they thought. I want to know how I can do that. So thinking is not guaranteed by an education. It's also not, it's not parroting. Rather than picking up somebody else's good ideas and repeating them, thinkers come up with a lot of their own original ideas. Have you ever been with people that are like that are great thinkers, and literally you will read, evaluate, and look at something, a dozen different ways, and they will come up with something you never read, never saw, and it comes from a different approach. I have particularly one friend in my life that I'll try to think of every scenario that's possible, and the moment I can make a phone call to him and just say, "What do you think?" And he never gives me anything that I've ever read before or even thought of myself. And that's why I appreciate his ability. He thinks from a totally different perspective. So thinking is not just parroting. Anybody can parrot. Anybody can just be a mockingbird and say what others have said or what they've read. Real thinking is learning a lot about how to use your mind, process information and experiences that you have in order to make a difference. And I want to tell you, if you're going to go further in life, you've got to learn mentally how to think. So let me give you 7 facts about thinking. One is it's a discipline. It's intentional. It's a forced habit. Nobody just says, hey, I'm going to learn to think. The fact is they have to say, I want to develop this mind. I want to develop my thought processes. And so it's a discipline. It's not easy to do. It's easier just to kind of, repeat what others have said. It's easier just to be a reflection. It's a genuine discipline to do it. It's also hard work. It's harder than you think to think, okay? When you first do that, you'll discover that you may not have a lot of original ideas, but until you find your own process and your own pattern, you won't ever become what you're designed to become. So it's hard work. Number 3, the difference between people who fail and people who succeed is that they think differently. That's the fact. The way that you can determine the difference between somebody who failed and someone who succeeded is that they're just thinking different. They both are physical. They both have the same opportunity, maybe in the same family, maybe in the same bloodline. They may be in the same environment. But the difference is that people that succeed and people that fail just think differently. And so it's very important to understand that. Number 4, the better you think, the higher you go. The better you think, the higher you go. You'll notice that you will begin in any field or organization to start at a certain level, maybe with everyone, but in time, the better thinkers go further. And there's something about they've just learned how to navigate a little easier, and they learn from mistakes. And as a result of that, the better you think, the higher you go. Number 5, you can control your thoughts. That's one of the things that some people have a real problem with. They say, well, I just can't control it. It just kind of comes, and I just go with whatever my impulse is. No, you can control your thoughts. In fact, whatever you focus on, not only do you feel, but whatever you focus on, you'll find. And so you have to discover that I want to learn this answer. I'm going to ponder over it, study over it, obsess over it, move it like a diamond in the light in every way I can until one day I see something that I didn't see before. You can control your thoughts. Number 6, you cannot change your life or the results of your life without changing your thinking. I mean, if you're where you are and you're saying, I really want a better life, I really want a better ministry, I really wanted my church to grow, it'll never change until you change the way you think. Now, let me help you. Those of you that you're in ministry, I started, as some of you may know, with 32 people, and today we have thousands, but with those 32, I was in an environment where everybody was the same and everyone was comfortable. And one day somebody put in my hand a book, and I'll never forget the book. It was a book called All You Can Do Is All You Can Do, But All You Can Do Is Enough. And it was written by A.L. Williams, the founder of Prime America Insurance Company, and he began here in the city I'm in, Columbus, Georgia. He was a football coach that went on to become a billionaire. And I was intrigued when they put that in my hand about how this guy that was the local guy making $25,000 a year became a billionaire. So I started reading. And as I began to read, I saw things and noticed that he thought differently than other people. I'd write those down. I'd try to apply them. And that took me to another level. There came another day. I was in the pastor's, a friend of mine, Ike Reichard, and in his office. And he was the president of the Georgia Baptist Convention at that time. And we were talking because we're friends. And he gave me a little cassette tape in those days. And it was a cassette tape by a man I'd never heard of named John Maxwell. I got in the car as I was leaving. I put it in my car, started driving down the road, and I realized I'm going to have to pull over lest I have a wreck, because what he was saying was totally out of the box. And I was trying to write at the same time. So I just pulled over into like an Arby's restaurant parking lot, and I listened to the rest of that cassette. And then I did something further. I called the phone number on the back of the cassette, and I said, I want to order everything he's got. Now, I didn't have a lot of money, but I knew then my life would change if I invested in the right way. And so I ordered it. And as a result of that, they sent me a box of that. I listened to everything he had to say. He made me feel as if that there was possibility, that there was hope, that I could grow through that. One day I had the privilege of meeting him, and when we met, he said, Bill, you and I think so much alike. And I confessed to him, yeah, the reason we think alike is because you helped me to learn to think. And I've learned so much, and everything I've learned a lot about that was from you. And we developed a friendship out of there. And he actually, endorsed my book and all the other things, and the relationship's been great. But I changed my thinking, and changing my thinking suddenly made me approach ministry different. And now church began to grow, and my life began to grow, my marriage began to grow, my relationships began to grow, my finances began to grow. Everything began to change around me. I believe you have to constantly be evolving. I think if you're not, one day you're going to find yourself decaying, and you're going to find yourself totally empty and without, and you're going to wonder why other people that maybe didn't have the talent, maybe didn't have the education, maybe didn't have the experience you had, have gone further, and you're where you are. So you cannot change your life or the results of your life without changing your thinking. So always be open, be willing, and ready to change. Now, let me give you the next one, number 7. Every decision you make is a value decision. Every decision you make. What you're going to eat is a value decision. Do I want to eat this because it's healthy? Do I want to eat this because it tastes good? Do I want to eat this because it costs less? That's the value decision. Everything you do, every single decision you make in life is a value decision. So you've got to understand that. I recently was talking with somebody who didn't have a good relationship with his father. And he said, I want it. He said, my sister has a great relationship with my father. And my value is I want to have a relationship with my father. But we don't have that. And I said, I can tell you why you don't have it. I mean, that's really simple. You want to have it, but the problem you're having is, I'll guarantee you that your sister opens the door. If somebody knocks on the door of your house, you're going to open that door. And I said, your sister opens that door all the time by asking questions of your father, right? And he said, well, now that I think about it, yeah. I said, yeah. She says, Dad, what do you think about this? Dad, what do you think about that? Dad, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about that? And I said, your sister asked that, right? I said, yeah. I said, when's the last time you asked your dad, what do you think? And when I shared that with him, he said, probably 10 years ago. And I said, why? And he took it as this. He said, well, I want my dad to think that I'm independent and I don't need him anymore. And I said, okay, you just said it. Your dad thinks you don't need him anymore. Your dad thinks, apparently, I have no value to you because you're not willing to open. Now, you may ask your friends, but you never open the door to your father. So when I shared that with him, I said, if you want a relationship, then you have to open the door. And you open the door in every relationship by asking questions. That's how you open the door. And the good news was that a couple of months later, he wrote me a little card. He said, my relationship now with my father is closer, I think, than my sister and my father. And he said, I would have never known that had I not asked you. Well, I think he had a value that he wanted to be seen in the eyes of his father as you're independent. But what the message was conveying is, I'm so independent, I don't need you anymore, old man. And so therefore, the daughter was opening the door all the time. And the daughter and the father were having a relationship, and he wasn't. And he was looking through his eyes. I say to you, every decision you make is a value decision. Whatever that is, whether it's relationships, whether it's finances, whatever it is, it's a value decision. You choose, am I going to spend time with my family, or am I going to spend time doing something else? I'm speaking with a friend the other day that spends all of his time on a golf course. Now, his wife is leaving him. And the reason is, on their anniversary, he's on a golf course. On their wedding date anniversary, on Christmas Eve, he's on the golf course. And so I said, no wonder your marriage is falling apart. No wonder she's leaving. You made a value decision. You chose golf is more important than the wife. And he's saying, well, I don't understand that. Well, yeah, you don't understand it because you think, I love my wife, I love golf. What she's hearing is you love golf more than the wife. And I said, now, your values, do you want your wife? And he said, yes. My question is, are you willing, if you had to choose one forever, to lose your wife or lose golf? I mean, you don't have to lose both, but if you had to lose both, what would you do? He said, well, obviously, I wouldn't want to lose my wife. I said, what's happening now? He said, I'm losing my wife. Okay. You made a value decision. So every decision you make throughout this whole day, if you're going to buy a car, is it the price or is it the comfort? Is it the gas mileage? Every decision is a value decision. That's why you want to learn to think that way. So I'm going to give you just quickly 16 different types of thinking. I won't call on all these. You'll have to figure a lot of these out yourself. But I'm just going to call out what they are, and then you'll realize why we think different. And if you can figure out why we think different, you realize you don't have to think the way I think. We're all different. It's okay the way you think. But you have to learn not only to know how you think to be able to think, but you have to learn how others think to appreciate them. And if you don't, then your problem is you're going to do a lot of flybys in connections. So here's 16 different ways. One is small thinking. Small thinking is when it's safe, it's secure. We think that, but it's really not safe in the long run. But that's what we think. Small thinking. I don't upset the apple cart. And no, you don't upset the apple cart, but the apple's in it rot. Okay. It puts a lid on your growth. Small thinking is based out of fear, or it's based out of easy, and generally people make excuse for why they think small. They call it, I'm doing that because everything's working well. Well, nothing stays the same. There's big picture thinking. Big picture thinking is the person who thinks of the big overall long term where that is. Now, they think big picture. They can't think small because they're always thinking large. Nothing wrong with either one of those as long as you can evaluate which they are and evaluate which you are. Third is creative thinking. There's some people that are highly creative. They do what we call thinking out of the box. They basically think of ways that we can do something that solves a need or a problem. Number 4 is dream thinking. There's some people that it's not big picture like seeing how the organization can be better. They think of things that haven't been thought of. Walt Disney, would be a great example of one of those dream thinkers. They think of things that nobody else is doing, and somehow they make that and implement that right. Number 5, realistic thinking. Realistic thinking are people that think, of the facts. They face facts. The truth is that the truth will set you free, but it usually makes you angry at first. A lot of people don't like to be around realistic thinkers. They think if I'm around the realistic thinker, they're going to say, don't do that, and they're going to say a no to me. It's okay to have no. I need people that are realistic thinkers around me. I spoke with a man just yesterday who's losing a ton of money, that he's an innovator and he really thinks big picture. And his right-hand man was a realistic thinker, and together they were perfect balance. But then his right-hand man and him had a conflict, so his right-hand man left, and now he's financially in problems. The reason he's in problem is because he lost the person who was the realistic thinker, who said, before we act, let's think about this. And so realistic thinkers, that's where they are. They think of the pros and cons. They think of worst case scenarios. It's okay. That's how they think. And you need those in your life. Then there's number 6 is random thinking. There's some people that it just comes out. I mean, it's not at a specific time. Somehow an impulse comes, and they don't intentionally sit down and say, okay, let me think, make myself think. Thoughts just come at times that when it pops out of their head, you just say, okay, they just randomly think about that, but that's how they do it. They don't spend a lot of energy trying to, but when they come up with a thought, it's worth listening to. Then there's number 7 is strategic thinking. If you ask me of my thinking, that's probably where I am. If I have to identify the 16 kind, that's a lot more of me. I'm a strategist. If you tell me where you want to go, I can tell you how to get there. It's easy for me if you will say, this is what I want to do, okay? I did that with, I think of my son with my middle son that's the pastor here, even with my youngest son, who at one time, Dad, this is what I want to do. Okay, all you got to do is ask me, tell me what you want to do. And I know how to think strategy. I know that. And so that's just the way I'm wired. Generally, people that think strategically are chess players and people like that. They like to solve puzzles, and that energizes them. Number 8 is possibility thinking. There are people that think, what if? You know, and they almost think so far out of the box that you wonder about them if they're even on the planet. But they think, what if, and could it be? And they're not bad. They're not daydreamers like you think, but they think that way. Number 9, impulsive thinking. There are people that just, you know, they're basically their thoughts different from random, but their thoughts are just, you know, here's an idea. I used to be with a guy that he was deaf and dumb, but he was an impulsive thinker. And we would just be thinking about something else, talking about something else, doing something else, and all of a sudden he'd go, idea, idea. And he would do in sign language. And I would know sign language at that time when I was younger. But he always had a good idea, but it would just pop in his head. And it had nothing to do. He may see a flower and all of a sudden think something, or see a red car and all of a sudden a thought triggered something. Number 10 is reflective thinking. Reflective thinking is when people are always looking back. You know, their main thing is that they may have a big windshield, but they're looking in the rearview mirror. They're always looking back and saying, what if I'd have done this? Should I have done that? Could I have done this? And that's just the way they think. Nothing wrong with that. Now, all of these have an upside and a downside. You don't want to be locked in and not learn to appreciate the others. Or if you're too reflective, you'll never move. You'll spend all your life looking back and living with regrets. But reflective thinking can also become a great tool for learning. You can look back and say, what did I do right there? What did I do wrong there? How would I change that? Then there's number 11. It's private thinking. There's some people that just think better when they're by themselves completely. They can't hear any other noise. They can't have any other distraction. They literally think privately, and they live their life pretty quiet, but that's how they think. They can close that door, and that's where they are, and they think private thoughts. And sometimes they're the kind of people that you want to say, what are you thinking? Open up, tell me, because there may be some gold there that they're not sharing, but they navigate their own life. Then there's number 12, which is opposite of that. It's out loud thinking. I lean to that to a certain percentage. I feel out loud thinking is this: I want to be in a room with everybody. I don't like to be in a room with just one person. I want a room full of people, and I want to throw the idea out there, and I want them to pick it apart, tell me everything wrong, everything right. I want them to see it before I tell it to others. And so I have no problem putting a group together. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all if you say it won't work, and here's why. And so out loud thinking is something I'm real comfortable with. Sometimes through the years, though, and you'll find this as a minister, you're gonna share it with other people. And I've had people on my staff before that said, don't tell them. Keep it quiet. Don't think out loud. And theirs was a fear that if you think out loud, somebody will shoot it down. Well, I'd rather get shot down among the staff than shot down with the whole church. So those of you in ministry understand it's okay in a group to bring the people together and say, I just want to think out loud. And you don't want to have people that just think the way you think. You want some of those others in that room as well because they add value to it. Then there's number 13, group thinking. A group thinking is pretty much like that. When I'm thinking out loud, I will think sometimes by myself. I have to say it. I'll write it down. I may be privately or I may be without anyone, and I'll say it. Group thinking is with everybody. You create synergy in the room. Then there's number 14, there's selfish thinking. Selfish thinking is somebody that all they think of is what benefit is it for them. And those are the kind of people that are a little bit scary because they don't really care about anybody else. They care about themselves. And they may do anything possible in order just to advance themselves. Selfish thinkers are generally miserable. They don't get far in life. And they're the kind that in the end of the day, even when they get where they want to be, they're unfulfilled because nobody went with them because they thought about themselves. Number 15 is unselfish thinking, just the opposite. That's the thinking where you may be thinking for somebody else. This benefits you more than me. This will help the organization more than myself. Unselfish thinking is the idea that we can make something better whether I'm at the front of that or not. And then there's number 16, is what we call bottom line thinking. So there's 16 different types. Bottom line thinking is somebody that just looks at the very end of it. And at the end of that moment, they say, okay, what's it going to be if we make this decision? John Maxwell said this: good thinking will produce more good thinking if you make thinking a habit. So I ask you today about thinking to do something. And here's what I also learned along studying some of that. I discovered that the top CEOs in the world, not just America, but the top ones in the world, will tell you something that we just sometimes have neglected to know or investigate. They say we intentionally set aside time to think. Now, whether they be one of those 16, not all of them are even the same, but they all say we intentionally set aside time, just like for a meal, just like for a vacation. They say we intentionally set aside time every day, just think time. One man said he does 3 hours a day. One said that he did over an hour a day. Most do about anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. But they say we set aside a portion where we shut the door, turn off the phone, and we just take some moments and think. And every one of those that are at the top, every one of them had that as a part of their daily discipline. And I really benefited when I learned about that and thinking, that they didn't just make thinking by accident or when somebody had an idea or when there was an impulse, but they intentionally did just like they would anything else and said, I want to spend some time pondering over, solving or exploring. That's what they did. So my hope for you is this, that you'll look at it, take that as just a starting point in your own life, and that you'll decide, I'm going to become a better thinker. And the way a man thinks is going to be the difference in where he goes and what he accomplishes in life. My hope is that you can do that, okay?